Hey, it's Jess, and this is the Modern Hippie Podcast. Every week, we bring you an episode to help you along your self-development journey. So if you are looking to step past your limiting beliefs, discover just how amazing you truly are, and build your dream life, then hit that subscribe button and let's get to it. Welcome back to the Modern Hippie Podcast. We are on episode 36. Guys, I can't believe we're already at episode 36. Time is just flying by. It's crazy. Today, I am going to talk about anger and resentment. Specifically, I'm focusing more so on anger, or it's about negative emotions and being able to release those negative emotions instead of putting them on your friends, your family, your loved ones. I know that that can be very challenging on a regular basis, but especially now, if you are living at home with your family, or you have a partner, you're in that same space, confined space under quarantine or isolation right now, I know that this can be that much more challenging at this point. So this topic was actually a request by Michaela. So thank you very much, Michaela, for asking about this. The first thing that I want to say is that all of your emotions are valid. A lot of times we can see anger or quote unquote negative emotions as being toxic. And I know that anger is one that really falls under that category. I want to preface this by saying that there are, of course, issues. Some people have more serious issues around anger, and I am not talking about that today. I also want to add in here that what I'm talking about today is based on my own personal experiences, and that if you are experiencing regular, all-consuming anger, this might be a good time to seek help. With that stuff out of the way, let's dive in. When you are in the heat of an argument or a disagreement, let's say with your partner or a friend, a loved one, it can be so easy to get caught up in that moment and, get carried away with it. And so often, I know for myself, so often those moments have come with a lot of regret afterwards, because I would get so caught up in it that I would say things that I didn't mean, or maybe even if it was something that was true, I would have said it in a nicer, gentler way if I wasn't angry. And I feel like this is something that is very common. We tend to bottle things up, and we let things build up until it gets to a point where we just have to scream it. And so what I want to talk about today is to give you some strategies, some tips to help you to not get to that point, but also, we're human and we're not going to be perfect with this, obviously, and sometimes things still will get bottled up. So when we're actually in the heat of those arguments or disagreements, I also want to give you some tips on that, and then how you can kind of handle the situations afterwards. And then, of course, because this podcast is all about the deeper work, I want to also touch on the deeper stuff as well. When you are actually in that argument or disagreement, the very first thing that I want you to think about is to remember to breathe. Breathing, focusing on your breath can help more than you realize, and it can automatically center you and calm you down just a little bit. And sometimes that's all that we need in those moments, is we just need to be centered for a second. Like, it doesn't even have to be that you don't feel angry anymore. We just are looking for something to center you, to ground you for a moment, so that you don't say anything hurtful or that you might regret, and it allows you a chance to leave the situation so that there's no damage done there. So, very first thing to focus on is your breath. The next thing I want to talk about in the actual moment is the difference between reacting and responding. This might seem straightforward, but I want to just go over it. Generally, anger and arguments, disagreements, they tend to more so provoke a strong reaction. A reaction is where you are acting quickly to a situation, and that generally comes across as potentially hurtful. It's not really thought out. It's quick. It's a quick reaction. Whereas responding means that you're taking a second, take a couple breaths like we spoke about before. Take a couple breaths, and then you can respond. And when you respond, that means that it's more thought out. It's not threatening. It's less likely to provoke another reaction. When you react to a situation, that's what it does, is it generally provokes another reaction. And that's when these arguments can become very heated and they can become toxic if you aren't careful. But what we're looking for in our relationships, because it is so important that you discuss these things with your partner, your family, your friends, when something comes up that does hurt you or bother you or anger you, it's important that you do talk to them about it. So what we're looking for when we have these conversations is for it to be a constructive conversation. You don't want to approach it, and they don't want you to approach it as just looking to be combative, right? The whole purpose here is that we're looking for progression. We're looking to have a conversation to be able to make this relationship better. This really is going to come down to, or it's so important to, in these moments, keep in mind responding versus reacting. You always want to respond. So again, that's a thought out, non-threatening response to what somebody is saying to you, rather than reacting, which is quick and not really thinking it through, maybe saying something hurtful or something that you might regret. The other thing along these lines that I want you to think of, and you might not be able to actually think of this in the moment, so I want you to think of it now and just hear it, let it sit in your mind, and hopefully it will come up when you need it. But I want you to remember that you are in control of your response. So somebody's actions can influence your emotion. It can influence your anger. It can trigger it, but ultimately you are in control of how you respond to that situation. So just keep that in mind. Those are the tips for when you're actually in the immediate like fight or argument, when you're right in the heat of it. The next set of tips or strategies I want to give you is for immediately after. First thing I want to say is that we need to try to be self-aware enough to know what we need. Again, and you've heard me talk about this before, ways that we can become more self-aware is through meditation or journaling. Anything that puts you in touch with your intuition. So just know and pay attention to, what are some things that help you calm down? And maybe like in your journal, like I have a bullet journal, you can make a note. And whenever you notice that something helped put you into a better mood or helped calm you down or anything like that, maybe just jot it down so that when you're in these moments, you can flip back to it and see the things that have helped you previously. I want you to also remember that emotion is just energy in motion. I'm saying this for two reasons. One, keep in mind that since it's an emotion, it will pass. You won't feel angry forever. This situation will resolve itself. Maybe not itself, you might have to put some work into it, but it will be resolved and the emotion you're experiencing will pass. Just keep that in mind. For practical strategies immediately after a fight or disagreement, when you're still feeling, kind of hot and angry, the number one tip that I have is to exercise. And I know I have been there before where I'm so angry. My mind is just racing with thoughts. It's telling them off a million times. But the last thing I'm thinking of is exercising. But that's the number one thing. Personally, I believe that it's the number one thing that helps me calm down. It helps me to release my anger. And that's because, like I mentioned before, anger is an emotion, and emotion is just energy in motion. So when you exercise, it burns off excess energy. So it actually is a proven method that it will help you to release some anger. And not only that, but when I was reading up just on some tips and strategies to help with releasing anger, they actually mentioned that with regular consistent exercise, it can actually act as almost a prevention for, I don't want to say getting angry, but getting to the point of being angry where you explode. So it helps to process that emotion on a daily basis or consistent basis instead of letting it build up. So that would be my number one strategy for immediately after you have retreated from this argument. I also want to say that another important thing to do is to give yourself space, to give yourself time to process. So it's important to have a calm place where you can go that you won't be bothered. You can actually take that time to yourself that you need and be able to process what happened, because we all do need that. We need to have that downtime to be able to calm down, to process, to really think through what happened. And having that space, having that time will only allow you to be able to come back to that conversation more level-headed, more clear-headed, and again, like we said in the beginning, have a more constructive conversation rather than just butting heads or just reacting to each other's strong emotions. So being active, having a space that you can go where you won't be bothered, having that time to process, those are really important to do right after an argument. Of course, you can always vent to somebody as well, which is super helpful. However, I want to say that this should not be somebody who is related to this argument in any way. You don't want to be putting anybody into a situation where they're feeling in the middle of it. So, for example, if I have an argument with my sister, I don't want to call my mom and tell my mom all about the awful things and just how terrible my sister is, because obviously my mom loves both of us, and that would be putting her in the middle of that situation. So if we're going to, side note there, my sister is wonderful. I love her very much. But if we're going to actually vent to somebody, which, like I said, is super helpful, that's fine. You can do that, but find an unbiased third party. So go to, if it's an argument with a friend, talk to somebody who's outside of that friend circle, somebody who doesn't know that person. When I was looking up strategies for releasing anger, I saw one that I thought was actually really interesting, and I actually really like it. So I wanted to share it with you. I don't think it's very practical, but I was rather amused by it. Of course, it was a Tiny Buddha article because, I'm obsessed with Tiny Buddha. They had given the option or the suggestion to blow up a bunch of balloons, and you can write on the balloon a specific thing that's making you angry or a thought that you're having that's making you angry, and then just go around and pop the balloons. I really like that idea. But like I said, I don't think it's that practical. I know for me, if I'm feeling angry, I'm not going to stop and blow up 12 balloons just so that I can pop them, So, but I thought that it was amusing, so I wanted to share that one with you as well. Another thing that I have found really helps me is showers, hot showers. There's something magical about having a hot shower. It makes everything better. Everything. Maybe this is like your strategy here, right? Like maybe you go for a run, or you go somewhere to, just think and process. Go for your run, then go somewhere, think and process. You can also call somebody to vent if you want. And then after all of this, so it's kind of progressing here, right? So you're not at the point of the hot shower, you're probably not as worked up as you were right after the argument. But have a hot shower. It will give you another chance to just be able to check in with yourself and to process what happened and to get some more space from the situation. And during this time, I want to suggest, so again, at this point, we're not in the heat of it. We're not actually in the argument. And we're not even in that moment immediately after the argument where we're still feeling really high emotions and really worked up still. So we've calmed down at this point a little bit. But at this point, I want to say that it would be a good idea to try and see things from the other side. So if somebody is, obviously an argument is people having a difference of opinion. So try to just take a second, even just if you can, try to see what the other person is saying. Try to have some empathy and put yourself in their shoes and see if you can understand that side of things. Because once we have actually been able to do that, and if we are able to do that, then when you're able to see that person's side of things, that's going to make it so much easier to be able to go back to that person and have a constructive and positive conversation about it. I want to insert here and say that sometimes anger can be an emotion. Obviously, it's an emotion, but it can also be a mood. And so when I say a mood, I mean that it's longer lasting. You're noticing that it's not going away or passing by as quickly as an emotion would. And I mean, it is possible to get into an angry mood. If you notice that you're at this point where you're holding on to it, then I want to remind you that when you hold on to these negative emotions, anger, bitterness, resentment, anything like that, when you're holding on to those things, when you're holding on to those negative emotions, you are ultimately only hurting yourself. Because you holding on to those emotions, it's not affecting the person that you are feeling those things towards. It's only affecting your day-to-day life. You're better off working through it to be able to release those emotions and forgive whoever it is that you're feeling these things towards. So that's a perfect segue into the deeper work portion of this. Negative emotions are always going to come up. We are human. It is just a part of life, and we're never going to get away from them. They will always come up. It's something that we will constantly have to face. But when these emotions come up, it actually gives us an opportunity. It gives us an opportunity to learn about ourselves a little bit more. When these emotions come up, the root of them is generally a fear. It's a deep-seated fear that we may or may not know exists, and something is triggering that to cause that reaction, to cause that emotion. So it gives us an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper, which is one of my favorite things. When I am feeling like this, when I'm feeling these emotions or facing these strong negative emotions, what I find the best to help me get to the root of it is journaling. Now, this is definitely not while I am still feeling angry. When I'm feeling angry, I can't sit down. I need to be active. I need to be, hopefully I'm doing something productive, like going for a walk or doing an intense workout or something, instead of just like pacing and letting my thoughts run out of control. But I'm human, and both of those things happen. Once I have actually calmed down, then I have some space to be able to look at things more objectively. And at that point, I pull out my journal. I just write about the situation, about what happened, how I get to the root of it, because that's ultimately what I'm looking for when I journal about these emotions. Is I want to know what that root cause is, what that fear is that's causing me to react here. The way that I have found best to do that is by asking why. So I'm sure you've heard of this before, but what you do is you're just going to keep asking yourself why until you get to that root. And like I've already said, you will know when you've hit there, you'll know when you've reached the root cause, when you've hit a fear, because that is likely what it is. So an example here. Okay, let's say that I found out that a group of my close friends, got together for something and didn't invite me to it. I find this out and I'm feeling really angry about it. I've processed my anger around it, and then I'm at the point where I'm going to sit down and journal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, write saying, well, my friends, they went out to see a movie the other night and they didn't invite me, and it really hurt me. It really made me angry. So then the next thing I'm going to do is ask why. Why did that hurt me? Why did that make me angry? And then, so I'll say, well, because I feel like I was left out. I don't like being left out. I would have liked to go with them. Okay, why do you not being left out? Well, I don't like being left out because I don't want to miss out on things. I'm afraid that if they're not inviting me, then maybe that means that they're not really liking me so much anymore. I don't want to lose my friends. Already we're kind of getting there, right? That's a fear right there. I don't want to lose my friends. So, you keep asking why until you get to that root. And when you find that root, then that is something that you can actually act on. That's something that you can actually work with, right? So when you discover what that fear is that's made you react or respond, that's made you feel angry, then you can actually take that and meditate on it. You knew I was going to say it, but meditate on it and, just work with it and try to work through it and heal from it. So once we've actually been able to discover and uncover what that fear is, we can use that to really make our lives better, because we can focus on healing that area and working through it to release it and just go on to live our lives without that fear holding us back anymore. All right, guys, that is what I have for you on releasing anger and negative emotions. I hope that you found this helpful and hope that you were able to take stuff away from it. If you did find this episode helpful, I would be ever so grateful if you share it to your social media, share it with your friends, let somebody know about it. Like I said at the beginning, I know that these are some times where emotions are running high and we are stuck at home. I don't want to say stuck. It's like that saying, you're not stuck at home, you're safe at home. But you are being confined to your home with multiple people and with emotions running high, that can really cause some stress on relationships. This is a good time to be focusing on this and making sure that we are responding appropriately to any negative emotions that are coming up. I hope that you guys have a great week. I hope that you are doing well, that you're staying safe, staying healthy. You guys know I'm over at Jessica Rose Wellness Co. on Instagram, and I am always down to chat. So if you are needing somebody to talk to, or you want to reach out, you have any topics that you want to hear about on the podcast, or literally anything, just come over and say hi. Alright guys, that is it for this week, and I will talk to you next time. Okay, bye!